Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. It's time for another video where I am not doing the flying. However, my dad is today. Today he's flying from PBI to LGA, and he's gonna be doing all the filming. Of course, I'll be narrating along the way. Here he is.
Hey all, I can't wait to get on that 737-800. It's a vintage aircraft that Delta has in its fleet.
Yeah, it's generally one of the older aircraft, the 737-800. Typically, Delta has been flying newer aircraft along this route, but for some reason now it's a 737-800. Well, we're gonna go inside the terminal. I'm gonna drop him off in the check-in area, and then the TSA, and then he's gonna film. What a great feeling it is to walk into an airline terminal. I'm gonna follow him up to a point where I can no longer do so, and then we'll say goodbye. All right, he's walking on over to the TSA area upstairs. I'm thinking he's gonna get runway 22 at LaGuardia today. Yep, that's what the wind is calling for, and I don't know if he'll be making right or left traffic to runway 22 today, because the wind is basically coming from straight down the runway at the time of landing. And he'll be on Delta Flight 1708. Does that flight number sound familiar to you? It should, because my last two flight videos were all about me on Flight 1708, and I was in the same situation that he's in now. We don't know if he'll get the Manhattan view or not, and I've seated him on the right side of the plane just for it. It'll all depend on what the wind conditions will be like at the time of landing. In my last two flight videos, I sat on the right side hoping runway 13 would be the departure runway for the Manhattan views, and I was met with failure both times. Since I didn't get lucky, it's Dad's time to try to get that Manhattan view on Flight 1708. But before we get started with today's video, I've got a message from today's sponsor, Exter, which is a great company providing wallets, bags, and accessories. I've been using Exter for over a year now, and I find it absolutely fantastic. Their wallets fit my lifestyle perfectly with their small size, and even better, Exter has trackers that are available. This is Exter's tracker that's compatible with Apple Find My. It can be used globally to locate a lost wallet. I absolutely love it. Exter is currently having a summer sale offering 25% off until August 21st. But it doesn't stop there. On top of the 25% off, if you visit Exter.com via the link provided in the description below and enter code MASELLA, you'll get additional savings. So remember, enter code MASELLA. That's MASELLA. Now, back to today's video. Oh, I wish I had a flight going to LaGuardia right now, but I will soon. All right, let's check in with Dad for the good part. It's all his footage moving forward. And here's the older 737 that he referenced in the beginning of this video. That's Flight 1708, and behind it, you can see a plane taking off on runway 10 left. That'll be the departure runway today. He's on board and ready to roll from his seat on the right side of the plane. This particular 737-800 actually has updated IFE screens, but who cares about what Delta's showing on the TV when you have a window? He prefers the window, I do too, and I encourage you to also pick it because that's where the action can be seen, and it starts right now as the plane pushes back onto the ramp here at the Palm Beach International Airport, or PBI, or PBIA as some like to call it. Once the aircraft came to a stop with the tug removed, the engines were started and the pilot called ground control for taxi to runway 10 left.
Ground Delta 1709 off of Charlie 5 ready taxi. Bingo.
Calling ready taxi.
That's Delta 1708.
Delta 1708, Palm Beach ground, runway 10 left, taxi via Charlie 7, Charlie, hold short, runway 14.
Charlie 7, runway 10 left, Charlie 7, Charlie, hold short,
The pilot got the flight number wrong, but corrected himself right away. I know this flight way too well to call it 1709. The instructions are to take Charlie 7 and Charlie and to hold short of runway 14. As you've seen from my previous flights, sometimes the controller issues crossing clearance on runway 14 right away, and sometimes, as in this case, the initial command is to hold short of it, but the controller came back right away to tell this flight to cross runway 14.
Delta 1708, cross runway 14 at Charlie, continue taxi runway 10 left.
Alright, cross 14 at Charlie, continue taxi 10 left, Delta 1708.
Of course, clearance to cross the runway is granted with no traffic departing or landing on it, and you can see the runway markings down there as this 737 goes across it. The controller also said to continue to runway 10 left, which means that the pilot can just keep going straight ahead to the runway. It's a good day to fly to LaGuardia with no delay programs in place. Things are looking good. As a matter of fact, based on what I'm seeing at this point, I'm thinking that this flight will land early at LaGuardia since no restrictions are being placed on it. What a great day. If only I could be confident about that approach to LaGuardia. I don't want to disappoint my dad. In any case, the flight has been handed off to the local controller and is asked to line up and wait on the departure runway.
Delta 1708, Palm Star, runway 10 left, line up and wait, traffic 2 miles final for runway 14.
10 left, line up and wait, Delta 1708.
This flight is moving along perfectly. The controller told the pilot that there was traffic on a 2-mile final for runway 14. That's the runway that this plane crossed prior to taxiing on over to the current runway it's entering. Since the airplane is 2 miles out, Flight 1708 won't get takeoff clearance until that plane lands and clears runway 14 since runway 14 intersects with runway 10 left about halfway down. The controller did not indicate that there was any traffic on final approach to runway 10 left, which is very common at this airport since 10 left is the longest runway and is used for mixed operations. Runway 10 left is being used primarily as a departure runway at this time, and in a moment we'll see a red and white corporate aircraft on the other side of this runway that will take off after this flight. That plane came from a general aviation ramp on the south side of the airport. Once the runway 14 arrival is clear, Flight 1708 is issued takeoff clearance.
Delta 1708, runway 10 left, clear for takeoff.
Runway 10 left, clear for takeoff, Delta 1708. Flight 1708 is in the air. The tower controller hands the flight off over to the departure controller.
Delta 1708, contact departure.
Departure, Delta 1708.
It's a routine takeoff, and the pilot checks in on the departure procedure called the slides.
Departure, Delta 1708, 1700, climbing 2000 on the slides.
Delta 1708, Palm Beach departure, radar contact.
In the meantime, my dad is enjoying the beautiful view on takeoff to the east out of PBI. After the mainland is the Intercoastal Waterway, which runs up and down the eastern coast, and after that comes the Barrier Island with its very expensive real estate. And check out the color of the water by the beach today. Just stunning. It's a great view, but what's going to happen in the airspace that we're both so fond of up north? Throughout the flight, he got some decent views, but the key and star element of any flight is the approach to New York, of course. We nearly always choose LaGuardia for its close-in city views. JFK is too far away from Manhattan unless you're coming in from the north or west. In those cases, you'll fly right by Manhattan, but you'll have to make your seat selection on the appropriate side of the plane for the Manhattan view based upon the arrival runway at JFK. For example, if JFK is landing on runway 22 left, I'll pick a seat on the left side since Manhattan would likely appear on the left side of the plane. It's a complex science, and sometimes I get it wrong, and erring is something that I need to mention as we approach LaGuardia. I don't know what happened, but I checked the wind for the time of arrival for my dad's flight to LaGuardia, and from what I saw, it had appeared that the wind would be coming from the southwest, which is what's been happening on recent 1708 flights. This means that runway 22 would be the landing runway, and it gives the flight an opportunity to turn right or left onto the final approach course. A left turn means runway 31 is the departure runway, and arrivals to runway 22 will fly west of the airport on a downward leg to allow runway 31 departures to fly east of LaGuardia. A right turn means runway 13 is the departure runway, and arrivals to runway 22 will fly east of the airport on a downward leg up the Hudson River, providing a great Manhattan view, which is why I chose his seat on the right side of the plane. But there's a problem. The wind has shifted, and I either missed the updated forecast, and it calls for runway 31 to be the departure runway, so his 737 will fly east of LaGuardia, and Manhattan will be viewed by left side passengers only. This is a disappointment. Here the flight is already checked in with New York approach control. It's descending to 4,000 feet, and just like in my last video, it's flying right toward the LaGuardia VOR, placing the plane east of Newark flights and west of JFK flights. Once the plane gets closer to LaGuardia, a right turn to proceed further east will be made, followed by a series of left-hand turns to get to the runway 22 final approach course. We're looking at the water of Sandy Hook Bay and Lower New York Bay. Due to poor transmission capture on the first approach control frequency, I'll only be providing ATC commands from the second approach control frequency when the flight will be asked to contact it while over Queens. The first approach control frequency handles this flight from just around 10,000 feet to 4,000 feet descending on what's called the Proud Arrival procedure. You can hear that frequency on my previous 2 LaGuardia arrival videos. Make sure you watch them to compare how the previous Flight 1708s vary from this one. Yes, they are all very, very similar because on each of them, the view is from the right side of the plane, and due to the wind, which was really tough to predict, each flight made left traffic to runway 22. This flight will follow a very, very similar path, but it won't be exact. Each time Flight 1708 arrives, it arrives with a different mix of air traffic, so things like how far out the flight goes onto the left turn for the final approach course will always be different, and I encourage you to spot the differences. This flight has progressed forward and has made landfall over Brooklyn, which will lead to Queens. The first thing that will be different from the previous flight on 1708 is that this plane will be making a more shallow turn to the right to join the beginning of the left downwind leg. Typically, flights are told to turn right to a 70-degree heading, as has been the case with my last flights, but today the flight is going to be issued a turn to 60 degrees. Since that's more toward the north than 70 degrees, the turn will be issued in advance of the spot where the 70-degree turn is normally issued. As prescribed by the approach controller, we're about to start that 60-degree turn now. Always keep an eye out for Kennedy Airport, which will remain on the right side of the plane until we turn back toward the left on the downwind leg. Passengers on the left side of the plane are getting that Manhattan view, as well as a view of LaGuardia Airport. Since we're turning early, however, we aren't as close to LaGuardia as we normally would be if we were issued a right turn a little bit further on. On occasion, I have seen approach control issue this right turn while the plane was really close to LaGuardia. It all depends on the traffic load, and the airspace to the east of LaGuardia is clear of departures as they're all taking off on runway 31 and climbing to the west. Again, while on this heading, the flight just needs to be ensured it doesn't go out too far, or else the plane will be crossing the final approach course to runways 22 right and left at JFK, although at a higher altitude, 4,000 feet. For the remainder of this flight, you're going to listen in to the final vector approach controller control this flight as well as other airplanes on the frequency. But there's only one plane ahead of this flight. It's an indicator that we won't be going out too far. However, that plane is coming straight in from the north and doesn't have to make a left-hand turn to the final approach course. That flight will nearly come straight into runway 22 and Flight 1708 will turn left behind it. Let's check in with the final vector approach controller right now.
Delta 1708, 060 heading 4000.
So 1708, speed 180.
Speed 180, Delta 1708.
So the flight is on the 60-degree heading at 4,000 feet, and the controller issues a speed restriction to 180 knots, which will put this plane behind Endeavour Flight 5298, which is coming in from the north. The pilot of Flight 5298 wants to know if he's clear for the approach to runway 22, but the controller tells him not yet.
That might have been this, sir. Endeavour 5298, where was clear here, sir?
That's just yes, sir. I'm waiting for you to pass the final corridor from Westchester. You can start down to 3,000 now, Endeavour 5298.
Thank you, Endeavour 5298. I forgot about the rich people. Thank you.
No worries.
Haha, did you hear that? That plane hasn't passed the final corridor over Westchester, which the pilot refers to as being the area for rich people. That plane has just crossed over that area right now, so it's being cleared for the ILS approach to runway 22.
Endeavour 5298, you're 3 from Yeoman, 3,000 or above there, clear ILS 22 approach, 210 or better to advise.
210 or better to advise, clear for the approach, Endeavour 5298.
That flight was given a speed of 210 or greater, likely to keep this plane close in behind him. I'll speed this up just a few more seconds, and here the controller is going to have Flight 1708 start the left downwind leg.
Delta 1708, heading 040.
Heading 040, Delta 1708.
This left is a 20-degree turn and puts Flight 1708 in the exact opposite direction of landing and in the exact opposite direction of Endeavour Flight 5296, which is coming straight in. This 40-degree heading follows the north shore of Long Island, and on the left side are views of Long Island Sound and the Bronx. How far out this flight goes depends on where Endeavour 5296 is, and based upon its approach clearance, it's got to be established on the runway 22 localizer around the Bronx-New Rochelle border. This 737 will be issued a left turn once that flight is around the position that passes this plane. In previous 1708 videos, this flight went out further, but this is going to be a quick turn to runway 22. In the meantime, an aircraft behind this flight checks in with approach control.
Approach Brickyard 4342 4000 060.
Good, 4342 New York, roger.
That plane is doing what this plane is and can expect a left turn around to 40 degrees very soon. In the meantime, Endeavour 5298 is handed over to the tower at LaGuardia after being told to keep a speed of 180 knots or better.
Endeavour 5298, 180 knots or better till Greco. Call the tower there, 187.
180 or better, Greco for Endeavour 5298.
Okay, the Endeavour flight is just off to our left, so it's time for the controller to have us turn to the left and descend further over Long Island Sound to make our left base leg.
Delta 1708, turn left 310, descend and maintain 2000.
Left turn 310 down to 2000, Delta 1708.
310 degrees puts this flight at a 90-degree angle to runway 22's approach, so another left-hand turn will be needed to intercept the final approach course, but the controller plans to issue this flight a visual approach clearance instead of the ILS, so he points out the Endeavour plane or the airport.
Delta 1708, you can advise the field inside or a regional jet on the final, currently 10 o'clock and 42400 descending.
All right, we've got the regional inside standby in the field, Delta 1708.
1708, that's fine. You can follow the regional jet inbound, clear visual 22.
All right, cleared visual 22, Delta 1708.
Being cleared for a visual approach behind the Endeavour regional jet means that the pilot can continue the left turn. This will take the plane down the shoreline of Westchester in the Bronx, roughly following the path of Interstate 95. Behind Flight 1708, that other plane that checked in is asked to slow down.
Brickyard 4342, speed 180.
180 Brickyard 4342.
Here comes another left turn following Endeavour Air. The airport is up ahead and slightly to the left. As preparations are made in the cockpit for landing, the approach controller informs Flight 1708 to contact the controller at the airport at Greco, a point 5.5 miles from touchdown, so it'll be a while before reaching out to the tower for landing clearance.
The 1708, contact the tower at Greco on 187.
187 for tower at Greco, Delta 1708.
Here's the final turn to line up at the runway, and the view is of lower Westchester County. Things will get a lot more dense in a moment as the plane flies over the Bronx. On the left side of the plane is a view of the Long Island Sound and the north shore of Long Island, where this plane just came from. So 3 flights in a row, 2 with me and 1 with my dad on board, missed the Manhattan approach due to fickle wind conditions. Oh well. We both made the most out of all these Flight 1708s and made sure to keep the window shade up and take it all in. He's especially excited about the low approach over the dense borough of the Bronx. Even my dad didn't focus on the interior of this plane or the in-flight service because what excites us is our routing and the why and how of where we are in the sky. He told me that everyone around him was watching the IFE screens. How could they? This Boeing 737-800 is all set to land. The gear is down, the flaps are set, everyone is sitting, and there's only one thing missing. That's landing clearance from the tower. That's going to happen now as the pilot checks in at Greco as instructed by the approach controller.
Tower Delta 1708, 22.
Delta 1708, LaGuardia Tower, 160 to 18, runway 22, clear to land, traffic hold runway 31.
22 cleared to land, Delta 1708.
Flight 1708 is clear to land on runway 22. The tower referenced traffic on runway 31, which is the departure runway, and intersects runway 22 right around the point where this plane will touch down. We're looking at Co-op City in the Bronx on the other side of the Hutchinson River. Keeping in mind that this plane took a close-in base leg, the airport is actually rather quiet. I'm going to let you listen into the landing sounds for the rest of the video, and at the end, the tower will tell this flight to vacate the runway to the left and contact ground control. Let's land on runway 22 and be on the lookout for more LaGuardia videos in the future.
So the 1708 makes next left turn, going Bravo, contact 9.7.
Alright, left at Yankee Bravo, ground point 7.
Well, thank you so much for watching this video, and special thanks to my dad for filming it for me. He'll be back again in more future videos. Remember that if you're not a subscriber to my channel, I invite you to click on the subscribe button, click the bell button, click the like button, and I'll be back with many more. And don't forget to support this channel on Patreon. Here's a link. Thanks, everybody, and see you very soon.